welcome. For today's tutorial, I thought it would be really fun to show everybody how to make these needle felted cardinal ornaments. The process itself isn't all that difficult. It is a little time consuming and a wee bit tedious, but with a little patience and a whole lot of poking, I think you're going to be really happy with the results. So stick along with me and I'm going to show you how to make these felted cardinal ornaments. All the supplies that I'm using in today's tutorial are included in the description below, along with links, so you can go ahead, buy the supplies, and follow along with me. But before we begin, I really need to stress the importance of needle felting safety. I do have a link to a PDF I created that highlights some of the most basic elements of needle felting precautions. I implore you to please go over that and get acquainted with those tips. It's really important to have a pad. It's really important to pay attention to what you're doing. And it's really important to, when you walk away from your needle felting project, to stick your needle in your pad, because this lessens the chance of you essentially knocking your needle off and hurting yourself. So having said that, let's go on and start our project. To begin, we are going to use core wool batting. And what this is basically, think of it as the filler of your project. This wool has been washed, but it hasn't been dyed. So over time, it will yellow, it will darken. But this is a great economical wool to use as basically the core of your projects. To put things in perspective, a pound of this, so that's about 16 ounces, costs you roughly $20 to $30 a pound, whereas a single ounce of this is a top wool or a wool roving, and this is a Corriedale blend, is going to cost you roughly about $3.50 to $4 in single ounce. So if you don't want to lose a tremendous amount of money creating your needle felted sculptures, I highly recommend investing in a bunch of core wool batting. This I purchased from Paradise Fiber Arts online, and I believe they sell it for about $19 a pound plus shipping. So definitely check that out. That is in the description below. But to get started, I'm going to take a small chunk of this core wool. I'm going to break some off. And I like to work with small bits versus large bits because I just find it's easier to control. And my goal is I want to create a ball shape. So how I do that is I'm going to take the wool and I'm going to start gathering it by kind of folding it over itself and folding it over itself until I get a roughly small, almost like the size of a marble, little ball shape. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to poke it lightly into the project. You don't need to do deep pokes, just lightly poke the surface to kind of hold those fibers together. And as I'm poking, I'm moving my project. I'm constantly moving my project. And this is important because if you keep your project stationary and you're poking and you're doing deep thrust and pokes, not only are you going to kill your arm, but you're going to embed your project into your needle felting surface. And it's no fun when you get your project exactly where you want it to be. It looks perfect, it's beautiful, but then you realize it's completely stuck to your mat. And when you go to pull that away from your mat, it basically ruins all that nice work you did. So really important, keep moving the piece around. Really important for your arm, lightly poke the surface. And honestly, just a few pokes and already I have a nice kind of core ball shape. And to build upon that shape, you really just need to take other little sections of wool and wrap it around. See, boom, boom, boom. And again, I'm just going to gingerly poke, poke, poke. And I'm going to poke all around. And another tip I forgot to mention is when you're using your needle, you want to keep it as straight as possible. So up and down, this direction, up and down, that direction. And the reason being is these needle heads are really brittle and they don't like left and right motion. So if you keep going like this, the likelihood of you breaking your needle is going to be quite high. So when you first start out needle felting, I highly recommend trying to buy a bunch of these needles in bulk. And another thing I forgot to mention, I really should have mentioned, is we are using a 38 gauge triangular needle. I call this the workhorse of all the felted needles. You have other gauges. The lower the number gauge, the denser it is, so like a 30 gauge or a 32 gauge needle is great if you want to felt really quickly and felt larger projects, whereas a 40 or a 42 gauge needle is great just for kind of smoothing the surface of your piece. But for me, honestly, all my projects start with and end with a 38 gauge triangular needle. And why it's called a triangular needle just means that the little barbs, and you can't really see it on the camera, but you can kind of feel it when you rub your fingers across. There are little barbs in the needle, and those little barbs are what kind of grab the wool fibers and cinch them together. So the more you stab at the fibers, the denser and denser it becomes, hence why we can make these lovely sculptures. So now that I've showed you how to add layers to the ball, I wanted to kind of point out the different densities as you're moving along with your project. And right now, so this is the one I just felted for you all. This is one that I felted to kind of a mid stage, and this is one that's been in the final stage and covered with an off-white colored wool. And as you can see, obviously the size difference, but there is a difference in density in each stage. So the initial stage, you still see quite a bit of squishiness, which is perfectly acceptable. The more you poke at this, the denser and denser the project becomes. So if you think about it, you have a project, you have a needle that's got these little barbs. Those little barbs grab the little fibers, they cinch them together, they cinch them together, they cinch them together. So the more you poke, obviously the denser it becomes. So we have really squishy stage in the mid stage. So this is about halfway through the felting process. I have this ball, and as you can see, there is still some give in this, but as you can see, not quite as much give as your initial stage. So again, this is great, but this surface is still got quite a bit of give to it, almost too much give. And the reason why I say too much give is think of this as your canvas, right? So if I want to maintain a ball shape in this stage and I'm poking a surface to create, say, this little birdie, what's going to happen is this whole surface is going to flatten. So you're going to have a nice round ball with a really flat end. And if you don't want that to happen, you want to keep felting the piece until it does become denser. And that's when we get to stage 3. So once I get the piece to approximately the size I want, so I'm shooting for about 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover that piece in the finishing wool, that top wool or wool roving, whatever you call it. And that finishing stage really does kind of help make the piece all the more dense. So see the difference. So this one does have, it still has a little bit of give. That's important because, we still need a little bit of give to add fibers into, but not too much give. So see the difference between mid stage versus, the final stage, so not too much give so it doesn't really distort the shape when we do felt our picture onto it. So that's really important. And I have to say, this is where practice makes perfect. The more you felt, the better you're going to get at figuring out the right kind of density for the right stage of your piece. And with that said, I really should also mention, different core wools and where you get them tend to some felt quicker than others. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe it's the kind of sheep or how they process it or whatever. I just known I've purchased some wool and feels a little bit scratchier than my normal core wool, and it does felt quite a bit thicker, so I may not even be able to get to the 3-inch stage before I start getting to a density where I know I got to stop and add a layer of finishing wool before it becomes too dense. So I'm sorry I can't really adequately tell you how that is. It's just, this is a thing you gotta keep doing. You gotta keep doing until you kind of figure it out. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes to an hour since I last recorded, but that's how long it took for me to get to that small core ball shape down to the shape you have here. So this is relatively smooth. I did take quite a bit of time smoothing out as much as I could, but it's still not quite to the level as this one is that's been finished with the colored wool. So to add that colored wool, what I'm going to use, I'm using an off-white wool just because I kind of like the color, but you know, you could do whatever you want for your background. This happens to be, again, I believe it's a Corriedale mix. It's got a staple length of about 3 to 4 inches. You know, it's not a batted texture, so it is a smoother texture where all the fibers have been brushed going in the same direction. And this has been bleached and dyed, so the likelihood of this yellowing is much more diminished than, say, just using the core wool. Not to say that it won't happen, but it won't be as dramatic. So how I like to cover my pieces with this creamy colored wool, and it's a little bit difficult when your core wool is essentially the same color, is I just grab a small tuft of it again. I like working in small tufts. You know, I don't know what it is about me. I feel like I just have more control. And what I'm going to do is I kind of smooth it out with my fingers. So I kind of put it between my 2 fingers. Ooh, that's a section I don't like. And I'm just going to smooth it out just roughly. And I'm going to lay it across my piece like so. So you kind of see. And then I'm going to felt it down. And, you know, you could use the single needle. I also have what's called a pen tool from Clover, which holds 3 needles. I like this versus the 5 needle holders or the other holders because I feel like it does a much better job, for me anyway, at controlling where I'm poking, and it's much more comfortable to hold. But hey, to each his own. You do what you want to do, but the more needles in your holder, obviously, the faster this process is going to go. And I'm just going to go, you know, for the sake of time, I'm not going to make this as smooth as I normally would, but I wanted to show you that basically you cover that surface in that top layer of wool, and then I'm going to go, and again, I'm just going to cover it. Maybe I'll cover it in the opposite direction, maybe not. Sometimes I kind of like to fan it out a bit too, cover some more of that surface area. And again, I'm going to do this around the whole ball, making sure that I'm paying attention to the surface, making sure I'm not poking in one area a little bit too much so that it indents a little bit more than the other areas. I want this to appear as smooth as possible. I've been asked in my classes, well, how do I get it as smooth as yours? And honestly, the answer is just keep poking. The more you poke at the piece, the smoother it becomes. Now you can do something where you kind of lightly drag your needle across. So I kind of do a 1, 2, 3 poke, 1, 2, 3 poke. And by lightly dragging your needle across the surface, it's grabbing all those little individual hairs. And then when you poke it down, it cinches those hairs down into the project. Now, the nature of the beast, this is wool. It is hairy. There's always going to be some element of fuzziness to your piece. So keep that in mind. But this just honestly helps further smooth out your piece. And as you can imagine, your piece is going to become even more dense, you know, by doing this. But once you get there, you know, you're going to be happy with the surface of your piece and the density of your piece. So this area is got quite a bit less give than the surrounding areas, if that makes sense. So the more you poke at an area, the denser it becomes. So again, I'm not going to make you hang around, but I am going to laboriously poke all around this surface until I have the full surface covered with the cream wool and making sure that my surface is nice and smooth. And I'll see you back in a few. All right, so I've done it about 2 hours and 45 minutes from start to finish. I have created my sweet, nice, smooth ornament ball. This is the perfect surface for me of which to use my colored wools to draw upon or paint upon, so to speak. If you want to avoid this process, you certainly recommend buying the laundry balls. I myself have yet to use them, but after literally I just timed myself how long it took me to make one ball, I'm now heavily considering it. So without further ado, let's get started on creating the cardinal aspect of our cute little ball. To start, I'm a drawer, so I like to draw everything out. So literally, I just did this really quick outline of a cardinal, and I am going to include a PDF of this outline in the description below so that you can download it if you would like. And it's a really simplified shape. I got the little cardinal swoop on the head, so to speak, the chunky, cute little round body. I just love little chunky birds, little tail, and a cute little beak and black eye area. The wools I am going to need for this step are, I'm going to use a red wool right here. And the wools I'm using, these ones have a batted texture. And the reason why I'm kind of switching over more from the brushed combed wools to the batted wools is I feel like they just felt down smoother. I may or may not be right in this, but I'm just enjoying the batted textures more. To each his own, as Bob Ross would say. This is your world. You can make anything you want out of it. Use whatever materials you want out of it. I'm just telling you what I prefer. So I have this batted red wool. I also have a mixture of two kind of orangey color wools. So this is kind of like a raw umber, yellowy brown color, which got some black in it. Sorry about that. And then I also have this pretty orange color. So I think, one for the upper portion of the beak is the bright orange color, and the lower portion I'm going to accent with that darker color. I'm also going to use some black wool roving, and this is just to not only create the eye area, but also add a little bit of shadow throughout my piece. And to finish it off, I like using just the lightest touch of this bright blue. I just feel like it adds kind of a nice little shadow, and I like the difference in color between the deep red and that kind of light sky blue. Okay, so to begin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my batted wool, and you could use the batted wool, you could use the merino wool, to each his own, but I'm going to take my finished ball, and I'm going to look, I like to look and find which surface I think is going to be the best to paint or draw upon. And once I've kind of chosen that, I am going to kind of squish my ball down a bit. You can do it. Don't worry. You can roll it back up in your hands. But see, taking the palm of my hand, let me move that. And I'm just lightly squishing the ball to kind of flatten that area, because it's going to make it a little bit easier for me to draw upon with the wool. And then I'm going to take the wool roving, and I'm just going to start roughly outlining the shape of my birdie. You could take fabric markers if you really wanted and draw into this. There are markers that are called sulky markers, SULKY. I'll throw them in the description below, that you could use, and you can trace this image on using the sulky markers, and then with an iron, I suppose you can iron or transfer the image onto the ball. I've never done that with a ball shape, so I'm not sure how well that will work out for you, but let me know if you try that method. Put it in the comments below if it's a yay or nay, but it's one way you can try, making it easier on yourself if you're not a drawer or you just don't want to invest the time. But as you can see, I've kind of outlined one line. I'm kind of using the tip of his head as my little kind of anchor point where I'm figuring out where to draw the line, so to speak. And, I'm doing a second section of the wool. And I'm drawing it down, drawing it down, just like so. And we'll felt it down. Don't worry if it's not perfect. This is art world. Make it your own. You can tweak it. You can add wool here or there. I mean, my shape is not by any means where I want to be just yet. I'm just putting in a rough outline, okay? That's important. Don't overthink the rock, so to speak, and kind of, you know, think yourself out of this project. Well, it's too hard, I can't do it, yada, yada, yada. Believe me, I've done that pretty much all my life. You know, but yeah, just literally I'm just doing a solid red background for the shape of my cardinal. And I'm gonna do that little tail. So I have a little tail pokes out. You know, maybe you don't want it to make it as squared. Maybe you want to make it rounder. Maybe you want to make it so it has a point. Albeit, whatever. Like I said, there's no right or wrong in this. No right or wrong. You know, one thing I like to do is I'll take the loose fibers and I kind of twist them up in my needle and I'll poke. And that's one way to kind of gather all the fibers and kind of put them together, you know, but you do whatever little techniques works for you. So I've roughly outlined the tail, you know, looking at it, I think that's a little bit too long. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with kind of pulling that little tail out, and I'm going to use the dirty word in Felton, and that's called scissors. So get yourself, invest in a nice sharp pair of embroidery scissors and just cut off whatever excess if you think you've, you know, screwed up an area or if you want to tweak it. But now I've gotten rid of that extra wool, and now I can kind of form the shape into something that I'm a little bit more happy with. So see that tail, woohoo, I'm happy. And I can even use that extra wool if I wanted to, although it is a little bit bunched up, so you may not want to, but I'm cheap. I'm going to use it and I'm going to throw it back into another section of my piece and just to kind of round out that bottom. And I'm going to go around the whole, ball keeps rolling off my mat, I'm sorry. I'm going to go around the whole piece and I'm going to saturate it in this beautiful crimson red color. And I love how the red kind of plays against the cream of the background. So pretty. Just love it. So once I'm happy here, I may focus on the stomach. Like, do I want it to be a little bit more chunky, or do I, you know, want it to be a little bit more smooth? Whatever, you know. I mean, like I said, no right or wrong. You know, focus on however you want to achieve this. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to felt this ball, and I'm going to hope that I don't accidentally drag the piece off the camera, but I'm going to kind of fast forward the felting process so at least you can see me felting this shape and getting it down to the density it needs to be. So I'll see you in a few minutes. To get to this point, it took me about 15 minutes of solid felting, and I'm quite happy with the shape. The surface, you know, that can be left up to interpretation, but honestly, if it were me, I'd probably spend another half an hour at least smoothing down the surface. But for the sake of this tutorial and the sake of moving on, I'm going to go to the next part. So the next part is me adding the accent colors. In addition to the accent colors I had mentioned yesterday, I forgot that you do need a touch of white wool roving as well. This is just to add accent around the eye area and that little spark of life in the eye. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to take my black wool roving. I'm going to accent along the back and the stomach. I'm not literally just taking a chunk of the black and laying it down like so. I am just grabbing a little bit of the black and I'm just going to fan it out to make kind of, almost kind of like a web of black, you know, nothing too much, but as you can see on my hand, and the more you fan it out, I think the more successful it's going to be. So, you know, I'm going to take it and I'm going to lay it kind of on the top, you know, give or take where you want that accent to go. I might actually take off that excess like so. So now I kind of have a chunk of black, and again, I'm still going to tweak it because I really don't want massive black areas. Now this is where having a multi-tool I think would really come to your advantage, because when you have just a singular tool, it tends to like concentrate the areas of black in one area, which is not super desirable. You know, you kind of want it to fan out a bit, but to each his own. If you're just starting out, you can certainly use the single tool, but literally I'm just kind of fan it out and paint the black on top. Some areas get too concentrated, don't worry. You know, it's the nature of the beast, so to speak. You know, and this is kind of like a playing game. I'll do a layer of black, then I'll follow it up with a layer of the red wool roving to kind of diminish the intensity of that black. And if I think I diminished it too much or it still needs a little bit of a pop, I'll add another layer of the black. So literally you just add in layer upon layer upon layer until you're happy with it. And it kind of speaks to my background as an artist. I was initially a pastel artist, which is basically like a chalky crayon. And to build up the layers of color, you literally just took, you know, layers of color. You would do one layer, add another layer until you were happy. So that's kind of how I approached my needle felted projects, at least my 2D ones. But yeah, so keep playing with it, keep, you know, tweaking it until you're happy. So I'm gonna actually kind of fast forward through this process because I don't want you guys to see me laboriously trying to felt down and take away and felt down and take away. And if you did notice earlier, I also kind of took my scissors along the edge of the piece. I have these wonderful sharp embroidery scissors to cut off those extra fibers. And I think it kind of helps give that kind of variegated, I guess is the word, texture to the piece, which I really like. But again, to each his own, you know, play around with it, see what works for you. You know, maybe you want it to be a more solid black. I think when you do a more solid color, it tends to look a little bit more cartoonish, but that might be the feel you're going for. Like, I mean, this is art world. There's nothing wrong in art world. This is your art. You do whatever makes you happy. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start fast forwarding. So to get to this point, it took me about 10 minutes. And as you saw, what I was doing was layering layers of black with layers of red until I was happy with the shaded result. Now I'm going to focus on creating the eye area of my cardinal. And to do that, again, I'm just going to rely on this pretty black wool. And I'm going to take a small chunk of it, and just like I did when I was drawing the cardinal onto the ball, I'm going to draw in that eye area like so, like so, like so. And the eye area kind of makes this kind of funky looking, I guess, triangular area. It almost reminds me of a gnome's hat if you put it up this way. But yeah, this curved kind of triangular shape. So I'm going to try to repeat that curved triangular shape on my actual ornament. You know, you don't have to go all the way to the end over here because we are going to add the orange for the beak. But you know, the other areas, if you just want to kind of get them down, you know, a few tacks, and it should be good to go. You know, again, you try to at least smooth it out as best as you can. If you think it's not curved enough, you can kind of focus on those edges and push them down. Again, making sure you keep your needle tool straight, but yeah, until you kind of tweaked it and got it to where you want it to be. You know, if you have trouble with this area, you could always add some red wool roving onto the outer edges and kind of thin this point down a bit. I like mine a little bit rounded though, so I think I'm just going to keep it as is, but you know, to each his own. So keep going around and keep kind of manipulating the edge. So I'm like kind of pushing the edge and I'm pushing it in with my needle. You know, this is an area where you could potentially break your needle, so just be careful that you're not going like this. You know, you're more going like this. And I think you'll be okay. But again, I want to make sure I iron that out. So I'm going to fast forward through this part again, just so that you're not stuck here for like 3 hours on my YouTube channel watching this video. So I'll be right back. All right, so now I've fully saturated the eye area and shaped it in a way that I'm pleased with. So now I'm going to move over to his cute little beak. And as I had mentioned previously, I'm going to use 2 different shades of orange. So I have, forgive me, I have this kind of darker, almost kind of like a raw umber-y kind of color wool. And then I also have this brighter orange wool. And as you noticed, you don't need much. I just have these small tufts of wool. And what I'm gonna do is, I think I'll start with the darker color. So I'm gonna take the darker color and I'm gonna focus on the lower section and kind of going across where the black is of the beak. And then I'll finish off the beak with a chunk of the lighter color. So, whoops. Mr. Brown. There you go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take that raw umbery color, that light orangey brown, and I'm just going to kind of fill in on top of where my red was. Now the reason why I didn't cover the red part versus say the black part is I feel like with the beak, the red is a similar, you know, temperature of color to the orange or brown versus the black is such kind of a cool, dark color. And I find when I'm layering a lighter color on top of pure black, it really kind of deepens and darkens that color. And that's something I didn't want to do. So that's why I basically left that area of the beak kind of open so that I could just add my color. But, you know, to each his own. If it's easier for you to just fill in that entire area with black, go for it. You know, a few layers of the orange wool should kind of cover that color up. But for me, I don't want to compete with the black. So, and you know, maybe sometimes I'm a little lazy, so I just want to throw it in there. So kind of got the lower section of that brown, lower section of the brown. Okay. I apologize, I'm getting veering off the screen there. But just these small areas, I want to see what I'm doing, and instead I got this big giant iPhone in my face. But it's okay, you guys get to drill. So I kind of made almost a full shape of the beak, but it's still a little bit thin, and I'm going to thicken it out on the upper section with a tuft of the orange. And I'm just pulling out tufts of wool. Just placing it down, tweaking it down, you know. I'm doing that little squiggle thing with my, where I kind of take my needle and grab the little loose hairs and cinch them down, you know, but literally in just a few moments I have my beak. Try not to overthink this area too much, overfelt this area, you know, just a few pokes. That's all it really takes. You know, if I wanted to, I could add some more orange, which I probably will, to the top to make it a little bit brighter. But instead of just having that one bright spot of orange, kind of bugs me. But again, to each his own. And again, you don't even have to add the brown accent color. You could just make this full thing orange, and it looks just as beautiful and lovely. For me, I just like thinking, you know, there's probably a little bit of shadow on the beak, but again, you know, to each his own. This is art world. How you do art world is how you do art world. You know, there's no right or wrong in art world. Please, folks, like, don't overjudge yourself. You're going to look at your piece and you may think, oh, that's such a terrible beak, or this is such a terrible piece. It's not coming out right at all. And then somebody else might look at it and go, wow, that's awesome. How'd you do that? Like, so we're all our own worst critics. So don't overthink the rock, folks. Just kind of go for it. Have fun. This is all about learning a technique, you know, and trying something new, especially now that we're still in quarantine zone, land, whatever you want to call it. You know, we are in 2021, which is so nice, but yeah, we're still got a lot of baggage left over from 2020. So I very much look forward to teaching in-person classes again. But until then, I have you guys in YouTube and online. So woohoo! But anyway, here we go. So that's my beak. You know, in real life, it doesn't show up quite as harsh with the bright orange and brown as it does here on the camera. But you know, you can keep felting to kind of smooth it out. You can add a very thin layer of orange on the bottom to try to blend it out. But again, for the sake of I need to finish and move on, we're just going to move on to the next part. So that is the eye area and beak. So the next area I want to focus on is his little feet. And for this, I am going to use a pencil of some kind and kind of map out where I want the feet to be. So you may have to take the piece and look away from you, but you know, naturally I kind of, maybe there's a little stumpy there, a little stumpy there, and it doesn't take much. You see just a couple little swigs, and I have some feet, and this is a nice way of kind of quickly mapping out where you want the little bird feet to lie under your bird. But so there you go. I've done that, and now again I'm going to take, you can take the orange, you could just use the brown, you know, you can use both, whatever, but I'm going to take small tufts of wool, and then I like to kind of scrunch them up in my finger to kind of thin them out. So hopefully, I don't know if you can see that, but thin tuft of wool, and along that first pencil mark, and I'm using the darker color here, I'm going to add my first little claw. You know, you don't have to draw these little claw marks in. Certainly you can you know, certainly use something else, or you could just use the wool, or you know, whatever. But for me, I'm a drawer. I like seeing what the hell I'm doing. You know, it's funny, now that I'm putting the feet in, I feel like his body isn't long enough at this stage, but at this point, too late. So it's always good to kind of look away from what you're doing, see how big his head is compared to where his feet is. But you know, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna jump it up to whatever. I'm done. I need to move on. Too many people have been asking me about a tutorial for this, and I keep saying, I'll do it, and it's been taking me forever, so the heck with it. This is as good as it's gonna get. So basically, here I go. That little small extra bit, I'm just gonna cut off. So there's the first, you know, it really, not much at all. And then, you know, I'm gonna probably put some orange wool on top of that to thicken out the feet a little bit. But yeah, not hard at all. You know, another tip is you can kind of take your two fingers and hold a length of the wool that way and felt it down. You know, like I said, whatever works for you. This is art world. But yeah, so there we go. So I'm going to fast forward through this part yet again, just so you guys can see the process and I'm not keeping you here all night. So here we go. And there we go. Okay, so now that we've finished the cardinal portion of our ornament, we're going to focus on the branches that go around the rest of the ornament. To do that, I'm going to use a dark brown wool roving, and I'm going to use this reddish brown wool roving. And with that, I'm going to take small sections of wool just like this, and I'm going to lay them out going around the ornament. So I usually start in the front, and I'll take that section and I'm going to bring it down so it looks like his little feet are resting against that, and I'm going to felt it down. Nothing too glamorous. You can use the multi-needle tool, multi-needle tool if you'd like. And then, you know, as we branch out, you know, it doesn't have to be a straight line. This is a tree branch. It's in nature. So, you know, try not to make it too overly straight. You know, try to give this piece some wiggles and squiggles and, you know, some texture so that it kind of looks like it's a natural element instead of some line, dark brown line going across the bottom of your piece. So, you know, if you want to make your branch a little bit thinner, you can certainly focus the needle on the edges and kind of go around and push those down. I mean, there's really no right or wrong. So I'm going to keep on felting until I'm happy with that. And when I'm happy with that, I'm again going to take another small piece of the wool. Okay. You know, maybe this one's a little bit thinner since we're going out away from the main portion of the branch. And maybe I'll add, you know, a little V right there and continue the branch going upwards. I mean, really, all I want to do is kind of create some visual interest. So this branch, I want it to kind of meander all around my ornament. You know, sometimes I like to take my needle and I'll separate the fibers. And this kind of really creates a nice, natural looking, you know, pivot point. So, gosh, I'm trying to art while talking at the same time, and both my brain's hemispheres are like, wait a minute, talking is left brain and art is right brain and blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, you catch the drift. So anyway, I'm just doing that, and look at how it naturally comes to a really nice thin point. That's exactly where I'm going with this. That's exactly what I want. And, you know, you can kind of, you know, play it by ear. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you have little hairs, you can cut those off with the scissors, or you can just pull at them. But there you go. I think that's a really nice, successful tree branch. And you're going to go all the way around. So I have this. Now on this side, I'm going to focus, and again, I'm going to grab a tuft of wool, like so, and I'm going to add it to the end of that other branch I was doing. And, you know, maybe I'll have this, I'll separate these with my fingers. Maybe I'll have this one kind of branch up. I mean, look at how, on the other side where your other branch is going, and just kind of play it by feel, play it by look. You know, it's no right or wrong. I'm separating the pieces with my fingers. I'm just kind of felting it down, letting it kind of go and pivot and divot and all that wherever it wants. It's very free form. There's really no rhyme or reason. I suppose you could draw this out with a pencil like we did with the bird's feet, but I kind of think with this, you know, it looks better the less planned it is, if that makes sense. But ooh, you know, I don't Maybe I want to see, I'm glad I looked. I don't want the two pieces to meet like that, so I think I'm just gonna go down like this. There we go. See? You know, that's kind of fun. Maybe I want a piece that goes there because that looks kind of really empty and weird. But yeah, it's up to you, you know. You do what you think is best. It's part of the fun. And you can go wild. You can put as many or as few of these little branches as you want. I'm just going to do a short one right here, and maybe the short one splits in two just because, you know, why not? It is fun. And this is where you really can put your own creative spin on it. You know, maybe you don't want branches, maybe you want flowers, maybe you want polka dots. I don't know, like, have fun. You know, this is your ornament. You can do whatever you want. I just thought, especially for the holidays, it was nice having the little branches. So keep on poking, do, until you get to where you're happy with it. And some of those empty areas, you can, you know, if you wanted to go a little bit further across, which I think I'm going to because I want some green right there. I'm going to grab another tuft of my wool, just like so. And I'm going to lay it across like so. You know, it's nothing special. People look at this and go, wow, that looks so great. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really do much. As you can see, really not doing anything grandiose. I'm literally just kind of playing with the wool and seeing where it goes. And, you know, this is your time to play and have fun with this. Deviate, be creative. That's the whole point. But, and I think the more crazy looking it looks, the more like bumpy it looks, the better. So have at it. Boom. All right. So now I have the upper portion covered fairly well, but in the back right here, I just want to put a little something, something. So what should I do? Well, I'm going to look and I'm going to see where is kind of a nice pivot point. Maybe I want to put it here. Maybe I want to put it here. I don't know. Sky's the limit. We'll see what I do in just a moment. Stay right there. But again, it's not really meant to be any particular direction. It's really just kind of filling in the negative space of that ornament with something. And here we go. And, you know, looking at my ornament head on, I think I'm just going to put something right there. So here we go. And here we go. Isn't that fun? And in 2 seconds flat, or a few minutes, we have created a nice little branch going around my ornament. And I think that's not bad considering all the time we spent actually making the ornament itself. It's not taking as long to decorate it. All right, and you could give it a once over with the multi-tool just to make sure the fibers are all cinched down together. Up to you if you have a multi-tool. You know, I was just thinking, if you don't have a multi-tool, what you can do, I saw this online a majillion years ago. You can take 3 needles and you can wrap some wool around those needles and kind of felt it or wet felt it together, and that kind of forms an impromptu little multi-needle tool. Not as comfortable to hold, mind you, but you know, it does the job until, you know, you do want to spend the money. I mean, this pen tool, I think it's like, what, 11 bucks? Well worth it. It feels like I'm holding a pen. You know, I love these wooden tools for the single needles. It's much easier to hold than holding the needle alone. And these are no more than a couple of dollars. You know, I absolutely recommend going out and grabbing a pair or two and going to town. But here we go. So now that I've added the branches, I'm going to add some greenery to it. And the greenery I'm using, so I'm using a curly green wool. Purchase this on Etsy, or again, you can certainly purchase it directly from the farmers if there's one local to your area, or you can go to sheep and wool festivals, whatever. And I'm just going to, I actually don't necessarily want the curly part as much, although you can use the curly part if you want it. I want the part that I normally don't use in projects, this really kind of woolly portion of the wool. And the reason why that is because I kind of like how sporadic it felts down. You know, I don't want those overt curls. You may want them. You know, I'm just saying what I preferred for this design. But I'm just going to grab, after I cut those parts, because it's a little bit difficult to pull off, I'm just going to grab little small tufts of the greenery. And I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to, let's see here, where do we want to start? Why don't we start right here? I'm just going to add a section of the greenery right on top of here. And you could use your single needle tool, you could use the multi-tool, albeit whatever tool you want to use. But see how it just kind of gives a nice light green, airy feel to it. So it actually makes it feel more like leaves. I thought the curls made it look a little too dense. Again, though, to each his own. You could certainly use just plain old straight combed wool roving, and you know, fan it out and achieve something very similar. But you know, I just had a bunch of this curly wool on hand, and with experimenting, this is what I found was best. And this is usually the wool I don't really use, or just use for, you know, silly projects. But again, I'm just kind of adding until, you know, I'm happy with it. You know, you can certainly go over it again with, you know, multiple needle felting tools you hopefully will have eventually in your arsenal. But you know, I don't want anything too crazy, because one, I really want the focus to be on this little birdie. And yes, if you want to cut off all those extra hairs that aren't felting down, you certainly could. Put in your scissors up against the ball and snip, snip, snip. Yeah, I'm cheating, but who knows, who tells? And by the way, this is art world. This, you know, there's no right or wrong. You can use whatever tools you think are necessary. So see how easy it is? So I'm just going to do a slow turnaround just so you can see. But literally just add in tufts of greenery all around. Note how imperfect it looks. I think the more imperfect, the better. And that's it. And the final stage of the tree and the tree branches is to add the little berries if you want. I was using a more cranberry red for this for the holidays, but now the holidays are over. I think I'm going to make this nice, pretty maroon red. So I'm going to just take really small tufts of the wool, and with my fingers, I'm just going to kind of twist it in my fingers to try to form a little ball, right? Okay. And I'm just going to poke it right in like so. And the more you poke it down, the smaller the piece goes and the better it goes. So, you know, and the better it looks rather. But yeah, you can do them in groups of 3 or just single groups, whatever floats your boat. So I'm going to go fast forward through this and add all the berries, and then I'm going to show you how to add the hardware. The last little thing I'm going to do is, now that I've added the berries, that I realized I forgot to show you, was to add the highlights to those tree branches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those lighter bits of brown wool, and I'm just going to go across, and not over the entire branch, but just certain sections where I think I'm going to make it smaller. You know, just a teeniest little tiny bit of wool. I'm just going to go over the areas where I think it's lighter, where some of that light will hit. You don't have to do this, obviously, but I think it's kind of nice. It adds a nice little kind of touch of contrast and light. But, you know, just a little bit, you know, and you can go all the way around and, you know, highlight certain sections. You know, try to make it go up. You know, whatever. But you get the picture. So I would go all the way around and just do those bits of wool. Maybe the light kind of hits this branch under here. You know, I don't know. It's up to you where you want to highlight it, but basically just you see those small bits of highlight, and you can do it all the way around if you wanted. But I think that really adds a nice little touch. And one final felt-in thing. I noticed that I forgot to add the little blue at the end of the cardinal tube. Geesh, you know, these are all things you don't think about, I just do. But now that I'm explaining it to you all in YouTube land, of course I'm forgetting. So literally teeniest bit of wool. You can barely see it, but you can see it when I kind of put it down. And you can just kind of fan it throughout the top there if you want. And then it's easier with the multi-tool, at least a little bit faster. And just put that down, and we have our highlights. So now that we are fully done with our entire design, going around, make sure you look at it from all angles to make sure you are happy. It's time to add the hardware. So to do that, we are going to use a couple of tools because we need to form the little loop-de-loop, so to speak, where we put our ribbon. So what I'm using, it's a 20 gauge, or you can use a 19 gauge galvanized steel wire. You can purchase this at Home Depot, Lowe's, really any hardware store. Okay, you also, you know, a nice pair of pliers with either a wire cutter, or you can use a separate wire cutter. Those are pretty crucial. And you'll also need some glue as well, and a sewer's awl, AWL, to poke a hole through the piece. So without further ado, let's at least make the center little loopity-loop for our ornament. So this is the piece that we're essentially making, that we're going to stick through the middle of our ornament. It's literally just a piece of wire that I've curved in on itself and twisted all the way around. To make it, it's pretty simple. So you're going to take that galvanized steel wire, and you're going to take about, I don't know, I'd say 5 or 6 inches, give or take, of the wire. And you're going to take your wire cutters. Here are my wire cutters. And you're just going to snip a piece off like so. And then I'm going to move this out of the way. And then you're going to just bend the wire over and on itself. And in addition, to form that nice little loop, I like to kind of twist. So you have something that looks like this. Okay, so you have the twisty at the top and the 2 crazy legs sticking out on either side. And now my hands are, we're going to go with weak. So I like to take my pliers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist the wire in around itself like so, where I kind of pinch the 2 ends together, and then I'm just twisting, twist, all the way down. It doesn't need to look perfect because this is going to be hidden inside your ornament, but I think this is a more eloquent way and more long-term way to apply ribbons and things through your felted ornaments, rather than just putting a sewing thread through it. I just think it's a much more stronger and better process. So now I have this. I made this a little bit too long. Don't worry. We're going to take our trusted wire cutters again, and I'm just going to cut the bottom. So like so. So maybe you want to veer closer to 5 inches, but nothing more longer than that, because really, if you think about the sewing awls tool, the tool itself that penetrates the ornaments only about yay long, give or take. So we really don't want this piece to be longer than next. We don't want part of this wire to be sticking up out of our ornament. So I'm going to show you how to attach this to our ornament in just a moment. All right, now it's time to attach our little ornament top to our ornament. So to do that, we need a few tools. So we're going to need this sewer's awl. This one's by Clover. Okay. I'm also going to need some Alien's tacky glue. This should be in every crafter's desk drawer, so to speak. And then a little plate, or I'm just using this cup top, and a toothpick to help apply the glue along the length of our wire. But before we get that far into the game, we have to take our ornament. We have to figure out where we want the top of that ornament to be. So it looks like we got some greenery going on through there, but that is okay. So I'm literally, and you can use your felted needle initially. You can kind of figure out, well, how do I want this? That looks a little crooked to me. How do I want my birdie to stand up? Really just kind of think about it. Like, do I want the birdie going this way, that way? Do I want it there? But it really kind of helps. And then once you've kind of pinpointed where you think it's going to look okay when it's hanging, and try to get it from all the different angles, right? Look all around. This piece is 3D, and it's going to be presumably hanging in your tree or up around your house. So really kind of figure out where you want that hole to go. Once you're happy with it, you can mark it with a pen or a pencil, or use your finger as I'm doing. You're going to take your sewer's awl, and you're going to drive it deep into the project like so. And really kind of nicely pierce it. It's going to put a nice little hole, as you can see, right in the project. And make sure you kind of wiggle it around so that's, there's some space to add your little ornament hook too. But right now I'm just kind of going up and down, really making sure that I have given myself a good amount of space there, because nothing's worse than getting your little ornament top covered in glue, and then you're trying to stick it into your piece and your hole is just a little bit too small. Now, suffice to say, you don't want your hole too big either, but it's good practice just to make sure that you have a decent size hole. Sorry, I'm trying to work and talk at the same time. It's really not working. So here we go with that. So I'm just going to widen the upper top just a little bit. But I am happy with that. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to move on to the tacky glue. So, I'm just going to take just a small dollop of glue. It doesn't take much, guys, really. And this would be great if I can actually get the glue out. There we go. So just a teeny tiny dollop of glue, all right? And then I'm going to take, I like using a toothpick, and I'm just going to grab a small bit of glue on my toothpick, and literally I'm just applying the glue. You don't have to put it all the way up to the tippity top, because as you drive this piece into your ornament, that glue is going to ride up onto the upper portion. But there you go with that. And then I am going to take my ornament. Ooh, I'm going to get this out of the way because I don't want glue on my ornament, or at least not where, supposed to be. And I'm going to drive this in. Now, I did a pretty good job with that hole, so it went in pretty quickly. And I'm not gonna put the piece where it's facing this way. I want the piece facing that way. That way, when I add my ribbon to it, you know, and it hangs in a tree, you're gonna see the little birdie facing outwards. So, and you can always, if you want to, before the glue dries, you can take a little bit of the wool roving. Okay, I happen to have this off-white batted wool roving, and you can certainly felt some in there. And the reason why you want to do it before the glue dries is when the glue dries, it gets pretty hard and it becomes next to near impossible to felt. But when it's still wet, as you noticed, it's pretty easy to felt some wool around that, and that just kind of ensures that that hole is closed up. You know, give it about 24 hours to dry before adding the string and hanging it. That way it's fully secured. But that is it. And that, folks, is literally how I made these needle felted cardinal ornaments. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I will be posting more in the future, so if you would like to see any more tutorials by me, please hit the subscribe button. That should be coming up towards the end of this video, or there should be one in the lower corner, and I will see you later. So thanks so much for watching. Bye.